Hello everyone and welcome to The Bubbling Adventure, a podcast all about kids and how educating them positively can impact their entire life as well as society. Each week we're having conversations with guests on different themes, and our aim is to have open discussions, share different points of view and learn in a non-judgmental way. Today we're welcoming Melissa, who is a Paediatric Occupational Therapist, the CEO and founder of Ricardo Reading Mouse, and home educating mom of 5 children. She will tell us more about what she does and how she can help children from birth upwards with aspects of their development and sort of helping them adjust to various learning environments and supporting their ability to learn to read, write, spell, interact with others, and perform valued daily tasks in a confident way, regardless of age, ability, or learning style. The best way to support this podcast is to subscribe if you haven't already and write a review if you're listening from Apple Podcasts. But without further ado, let's begin.
Maman, maman, en faisant cette chanson.
Papa, papa, en faisant cette chanson.
Maman, papa, maman, papa.
Hi Melissa, how are you?
Hi Julie, I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, my name's Melissa Savonoff and I live in Brisbane, Australia, and I have 5 children aged between 22 and 10, and that's 4 boys and 1 girl. And my eldest son has actually just had, him and his wife have had their first baby 3 months ago. So
Oh wow, congratulations.
I'm actually a very young grandma, I must say. So that's really lovely. And I had a little girl called Abigail. They live in Adelaide, which is a bit further south than me. And some people don't realise how huge Australia is. Brisbane is probably about a 2.5-hour flight from Adelaide. And we are about 1,000 kilometres north of Sydney. So, and about 100 k's or an hour's drive from the Gold Coast. So that just gives a bit of perspective of where I am in the world. And I work as an occupational therapist with children for the last 15 or 16 years. And that's been wonderful, which I know I will elaborate on more shortly. And I'm married to a beautiful husband who has his own business. And I have also, through my work with children, developed a range of resources called Ricardo Reading Mouse. And I've received a lot of referrals over the years with children that have handwriting difficulties. So I have a range of early literacy resources for children that's ever growing. And at the moment, I've got an ABC picture book, a Learn to Read Your 3-letter words book, and apps on the App Store and Google Play, and a song album on iTunes, and a few different things, and a YouTube channel that's got lots of free resources. And I also do local workshops, or prior to COVID, I was doing local in-person workshops through the libraries for families in supporting their children in preparing them for school with learning to read, write and spell confidently and adjusting to learning environments and providing that support for teachers and parents. And since COVID, I've been doing a lot more work online, doing courses and workshops. So, and here we are.
Wow, well that's very interesting. So
Yes. Yeah, that's a lot in 5 minutes.
What brought you to, work with kids? Is it something that you've always wanted to do, or did it come later in life? How did you know?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, when I was at school in year 10, we had work experience. We were given opportunity, and I actually did work experience with a year 4 class, and I was given the special needs children out on the school veranda with about 3 or 4 children. And at the age of 15, that was a bit overwhelming to be given all the hard or difficult children. And I survived the week and I really loved it. And I began to explore special ed teaching. And actually through my grandmother, she was going to an occupational therapist in the aged care sector at the time. And she told me about occupational therapy. So I looked into it and found out that you can work with children. So I finished high school and started studying occupational therapy and worked initially in acquired brain injury and mental health. And then that was for a couple of years. Then I had some maternity leave And then I've been working the last 15, 16 years part-time in my own practice around having my other children.
Yes, and so could you please tell us a bit more about an occupational therapist, and so what do you do? How can you help with?
Yeah. Occupational therapy really doesn't give too much away in the term. It doesn't really tell you exactly anything, except most people think occupation is to do with your work, which is correct. And we do work in return to work and workplace health and safety in those aspects. But the meaning occupational therapy and the word occupation is the broader term of what occupies you, what is gives you purpose and participation and function and meaning in your daily living. So with people that have had an injury and that are going through rehabilitation, we support them in returning to what's important to them, their workplace, their independent living, those kind of things. And with children, we support families and parents with children, whether they have a diagnosis or not, what is impacting on their performance in early childhood years, in school, and then in entry to work. How are they participating, functioning, what's their engagement, and what's important to them as the child and what's important to them as the family. And so that's the broader term of occupation. So it's really quite a wonderful profession. I love it because you can work with the elderly. If you're drawn to work with the elderly, you can work in acquired brain injury, like I said. So that's in rehabilitation, in mental health, supporting clients to return to work and have that emotional and social support, which often people with mental health don't have as necessarily. They've lost those supports. And then with young children, parents may not have had information passed on from their parents. It can be overwhelming. What do I do with my child? I'm a first-time mum, or I have a child with a disability. So I really love it because we're there to empower and engage and support people to live a full lifestyle as possible.
Right. Well, that sounds great. So you help, for example, it can be anything you said, from a disability to just support for young parents, or is it also linked to the writing skills, or not at all?
Yes. So a really important occupation for children when they're going through school is writing and handwriting. And even in the day of technology with iPads and computers, there's a lot of research that indicates and supports evidence-based practice that handwriting is very significantly linked to improved reading and spelling skills. And so there's a cognitive motor, like cognitive meaning how you process and think about what you're doing, and then the motor impact of actually using your hand or using your body, using your eyes together. And so the process of handwriting, for example, is quite complex. And I often share with parents and school teachers that it's like learning to drive a car. So when my older three boys, I've recently been with them in the car as learners. You realize how complex it is, because you have to take on the gear stick, the steering wheel, the brake, the clutch, and you have to actually pay attention to the road rules and other traffic. And so it's the same when you're learning to handwrite. You can have your eyes down on the paper and really focused on how to write the letter T, for example, and the teacher may say, "The cat sat on the mat. Can you write this for me?" And the child heard it. They could act like a cat. They could draw the cat. They could say the cat sat on the mat. But if they can't remember how to write the letter T, all their cognitive power, I guess, or their memory and their attention is to how to write the letter T with their hand, and they will quite simply forget the rest. So it's the same as driving a car. If you're concentrating on the brake, the clutch, and the accelerator, the steering wheel, you can forget to look out of the car at actually the road.
Yes.
So, for example, that handwriting skill is really important, and it can cause a lot of anxiety in children who don't learn in the first couple of years of school, and then they're delayed in other areas. And a lot of referrals I've seen from school teachers or pediatricians, there could be underlying causes. Children could have autism or developmental delays, low muscle tone. They could have been the child, of abuse or neglect. And so there's a lot of areas we look at. And I guess as an occupational therapist, the three things that we can break down and explain to people and parents that might be out there, or classroom teachers that are listening, there's three ways. Like, we look at the child, what's going on, their personality, their age, their social, emotional well-being, the task that's before them. Like, are they being asked to handwrite? Are they being asked to kick a ball in a soccer class? Are they being asked to get dressed and clean their teeth and pack their bag in the morning? You know, there's so many occupations of a child. They're learning to swim, ride a bike. What is it that they're actually doing? And then the environment that they're being asked to do it in, which can be so diverse. Are they being asked to do it at home? And as we know with COVID, there's now home learning versus classroom learning. Are they learning it alongside peers that are distracting them? Are the lights flicking? Is the tap dripping? Is the air conditioner distracting them? There's so much to the environment that we look at. So we look holistically at that child-centered approach of what's happening with the child and getting input from the parents. And I encourage parents that they know their children the best. When they're a supportive, loving network, you can ask the parents, and they really are the child's first teacher, the child's first cheerleader, and child's first coach when it's a functional living environment with that support. And then also getting the support from the classroom teacher and putting in place things that can be done in the classroom. So it's really excellent. I love it. And it's very rewarding. It can be trial and error. It can take time to work out what's going on, but we're trained in that, and that's our area of expertise. So it's really wonderful. I love it.
Yes, because I can imagine that in some cases, this first diagnosis even could take time, right? Because
yes, it does.
I mean,
correct.
it depends. Like it's how you said, like how the parents know their kids. Are you able to chat with the teacher every time? How does it work? Do you ask more people than just the parents?
Yes. Well, in my case, often the parents come with a referral from the GP or the pediatrician or the classroom teacher. So they will come to me already referred with reports from others. So the classroom teacher may have already done a report to give to the learning support centre of their school, and then they've talked to the parents and asked the parents to see a GP or a pediatrician, or directly. We don't necessarily need a GP or a pediatrician or a teacher's referral. We can see parents directly. They want to see the child directly through a parent referral, and conduct our own assessments and developmental standardized assessments that are used globally. And we can submit those, then give them to the parents to then take to a GP or a pediatrician for further diagnosis, or recommend speech therapy, physiotherapy, behavioural psychology, optometry, whatever it is that the child may need. And I've been into schools as well. We work in the school system, and we can work with the special ed teachers and the learning support networks, depending on what the funding is for the child, and depending on, I guess, every country has a different setup in how that's done, whether it's private or public schooling and private or public funding. But there's a lot of occupational therapists who work in schools and the hospital system as well. So you've got so much diversity, really, which makes it really wonderful for the opportunity of working, because there's lots of areas you can work in.
No, that's very interesting. And so I had a question, like, what can we expect whenever we bring our kids to an occupational therapist? So I'm guessing it depends on the kid and the task. But if we take, for example, writing, are they like games? Is it also like a talking therapy? How does it work?
Yeah, with occupational therapy, it's very much activity-based and play-based therapy, and the functional purpose of it. So if the goal is handwriting, then we will look at the aspects of what's hindering that handwriting. Why are they not handwriting? Is it a physical thing that they have a diagnosis where there's a physical disability that's affecting them? Or is it a muscular, which ties in with the physical disability? Is it their processing of hearing and seeing and then outworking that through their hand? So some children might have an auditory processing difficulty. They're seeing speech. So if information is presented to them in an auditory way, then if they're in the classroom listening to a lot of information and being asked to write and copy, that could slow down the process. Or if they have glasses and their vision might be fine once they get their glasses and they're still not handwriting correctly, it's like, well, what's delaying the process? Are they actually aware of how to write their letters properly, or they're slow in writing their letters, so when the teachers are speaking, they're getting overwhelmed because they're not quick enough, and that's causing them to shut down. So it actually takes a little bit of, in the initial appointments, we get to know the children, and so they know we're not scary, and we do a lot of play-based activities that are age appropriate and interest-based on that particular child. And then if the task is handwriting, we will sit down and ask them to do their best writing for us. And that depends on the reluctance of the child too. Sometimes they don't even want to write. So we'll tackle it with play and different forms of write, like you can get them to write on a whiteboard or a chalkboard or paint and water, and eventually get back to the pencil if they refuse to pick up the pencil for you. But most children that I've seen are willing to show you how they write. And I explain to them that there's no other children here at the moment, and your teacher or your mum or your doctor has asked me to see how you go with your handwriting, because when your handwriting's tricky, it can make school not so fun, can't it? And you just talk to them in that way and encourage them. Let's draw. Do you like drawing, or do you like playing ball? And you can talk to them while they catch the ball. And so you do it based around their interests and what's important to the child, as well as obviously what the referrals come from the GP. Because if the child's not motivated and doesn't see value in it, then they're not going to be willing to participate. So that's a bit of skill and a bit of tact there in working with children.
No, that's very interesting, yes. And so is it why you came up with the book?
Yeah, the book, I was seeing so many children probably about 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago, which the book was published about 3 years ago, that were coming aged about year 2 to about year 5 or 6, that had terrible difficulties with reading, spelling and handwriting, but had not a major diagnosis that seemed to indicate why there was such difficulties. So I was working on their handwriting, and there's a research, there's lots of research on handwriting and evidence-based practice, and I was working from a Queensland-based guidance counsellor who did research at the University of Queensland on the functional implications of written communication, and how when you're writing, how if you're not up to doing it automatically, which is what I was sharing before, it can affect, like if you're not driving automatically, it affects your cognitive processing. You don't take in signage and other things on the road. So if your handwriting is not automatic, then it takes more of a load to remember how to write the letters. So you're more likely to forget your grammar, your punctuation and your spelling. So I was working with children to improve their handwriting, and based on that research and based on the link between handwriting and reading and spelling, improving their handwriting so their handwriting was up to the average that was expected for their age, and then there would be less cognitive demand on their brain. They remember their letters now, then we can focus on capital letters, commas, and the punctuation, the grammar and the spelling. So I developed the Learn to Read and Spell with Ricardo's English word grid. It's a unique word grid that I haven't seen anywhere else in the world, and it has actually 230 of your little 3-letter rhyming words like cat, bat, sat, mat, and it's chapterized based on the last letter of the word. So all the words that end in the letter T, cat, bat, mat, pet, met, set, sit, fit, bit, there's 46 of those words alone, and they're in one chapter. They've each got a picture and they're each in this little grid, and it can help children in their first year of learning to read and write and spell those 3-letter words. And the book prior to that is the ABC book, because a lot of children were coming to me and couldn't sing the ABC song. So, for example, I saw a child last week who is in year 3 and they could not sing their ABC song past A to D. And in school, you have to do a lot of alphabetical order. And when you're learning to write, you have to be able to sing the song and remember it in your head, so you can actually write the letters from memory. So you can imagine if you ask a child in an assessment, can you please write the letters A to Z for me as neatly and quickly as you can, because I'd love to see how many you know, and they can't sing the alphabet song, there's no way they're going to get them in order. So this young girl I've seen about 3 times, and she was consistently getting A to D, A to G, and then last week she came in so thrilled. Her mum said we've been practicing, and it was the first time that she could get A to Z, and she did it consistently with only one mistake, and she was one mistake around the letter T, and she was thrilled, mum was thrilled, I was thrilled, and she's in year 3. So that's a foundation now that she's achieved and acquired. It's brilliant for her confidence. And then we can build from there on then being able to write them automatically and spontaneously. So when you ask to spell the word cat, which she can't remember at the minute, she'll be able to do, okay, I spell cat C-A-T and I sound out cat k-at, which the Australian accent's a bit different. But when you're reading, you're sounding out the letter. When you're spelling, you are saying the letter. And when you're writing, you have to remember the pattern in your hands. So there's 3 kind of memories you have with that letter to break it down simply. And so it's really fascinating in how we would do that with the child and how we would talk that through with the parents. And that's how I came to do the book. So I've got an ABC song that I wrote on YouTube and some consonant and vowel songs so that parents can use them freely at home to help reinforce that.
Yes, we can link it. It's in the description box. You can click and listen to it.
Yeah, that's correct. And the links to the books, no doubt we can put there too. And it's that's learning, with the movement. You can sing and move to the songs, and that's how the resources developed to help children and families at home and empower the parents that there's things you can do at home and support your children, which is really wonderful.
Yes, and speaking of, I was sort of wondering, so if you notice that, or the teacher tells you that your kid needs support and that there's something that they're not quite getting from the first go at school, how, what can you do at home, and when do you know that you need to take them to an occupational therapist? Like how can you judge of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I guess when the teacher brings it to to a parent's attention, then the teacher will be experienced in seeing many children and have that professional experience there behind them. So I'm sure in all the cases that I work with, the teachers, out of their compassion and care for the children, have brought it to the attention of the parents because they're concerned about some aspect of their development. And from there, depending on the parent, they can directly refer to an occupational therapist to have a developmental assessment done, just to check that the child is fulfilling all the developmental milestones if necessary, or hone in on specifically maybe having a consultation to see if there might have been things happening that this answers a question for the parents, and they may have not necessarily spoken to the teacher before, and it may open a dialogue. Then there may be things happening at home that was a trauma or some kind of event which has suddenly affected the child. So it's kind of being aware, well, is it the child, or is it, like I was sharing before, the environment? Has something changed in their environment? They had a little sibling that's born, there's a baby that's born, so suddenly that's affecting their schooling. And also asking the classroom teacher for specifics, that's the dialogue between the teacher and the parent. And then from there, the teacher can either contact learning support, who would contact local OT with the parent, or it just depends. Some OTs go straight into the school and the child may be referred, and obviously the parent's aware of that and been involved, that the OT sees the child at school. And I know of parents that through their full-time work, they may have never actually met the OT. I was just speaking to a parent recently who hasn't actually, I was asking how their child was going with their school-based OT, and through the parents' full-time work, they haven't actually been able to speak to the OT who sees them in the schools. So in that case, there's reporting systems through the child's education plan that can be reported back through the school to the parent, and from the OT to the school. And so it just depends on that process of how it works. But for me personally, parents can contact me directly, or the classroom teacher can refer myself or a list of local therapists, and it's up to the parent to contact us directly or go to their GP and see if they're eligible for funding. There's different funding packages, and then take it from there. So there's a few different avenues, but it's finding the information, I think, that a lot of parents find tricky, and what to do if they're not at school and they're concerned. And not everyone always refers straight to OT. There's a lot of, I guess, general awareness that still needs to happen on what we do. And I get parents who, I spoke to a lady last week who wasn't really sure. She'd had a referral from her GP for occupational therapy, and I asked her, I said, has the GP explained what we do and what I would be doing with your child? And she said, no, not really. I don't really know. And that doesn't necessarily mean the GP didn't explain it. It may have been explained and it's a new thing. So, you know, when you're learning something new, you only take in part of it. So it's a lot of awareness and education that we do. So then I was able to then explain to her what we do and in what way we can best assist your child.
Interesting.
So people don't always come with all the information, so you have to explain.
Yes, of course. And so, do you have any success story? Really, like a time that something incredible happened, a good memory that you would like to share?
Yes, I can think of two children that jump out to me. One young boy is probably about 14 or 15 now in a regular high school, and he came to me as a baby at about 6 months old with low muscle tone, unable to roll and unable to move. And I started seeing him and doing therapy as a baby and encouraging him to move and to play and motivating him with different activities with his mum, like getting a swimming ring and getting him to lay over a swimming ring and, you know, pulling his toes up to his hands and little toys and different things that we do, which would take too long to go into for the point of now. But I continued to see him regularly throughout the course of his growing up as a toddler, and he learnt to sit, he learnt to walk, and he entered a regular school, and his mum continued to see me and a speech therapist on a regular basis, which regular for me working part-time was definitely not weekly or fortnightly. It might have only been a couple of times a term. And I would give her home program activities, which is part of that empowerment and education for parents that I've always worked from that philosophy. I've never actually seen children on a weekly or a fortnightly basis unless I'm doing a short assessment, which you need to do 1 or 2 appointments close together to get the assessment and the report done for the school or the GP. But I've never done ongoing therapy weekly or fortnightly. I've very much operated educating and empowering and coaching parents in what they can do at home in the usual natural environment to empower them and boost the confidence of the child and the parent in their bond together in working. So I give them the home program, which is 3 or 4 times a week, 10 or 15 minutes a day, different activities. And this young boy continued to improve. He went through stages of sensitivities to his feet. He was doing swimming lessons, didn't want to go in the water and touch the bottom of the pool. And I knew swimming was really important for his low muscle tone, and so did his mum. So we put socks on his feet so he could swim with socks, and then he didn't have the slippery sensation of the tiles, and he loved it. And he continued on seeing me till he entered high school, year 8, in a regular school, and he just continued to thrive. And so I don't see him anymore. He has no need of me, and that's really wonderful. So that's that, you know, it's really excellent. And a lot of other children I haven't seen for that long at all. Another young boy I saw for maybe 2 years, from preschool till about year 2, and he had autism spectrum disorder and had a lot of compulsive, obsessive behaviours. There's a lot of things that we had to work with, and he wasn't speaking when he first came to see me. I did music with him. He loved music, and we put music on. We do his handwriting, do different activities with him, and he ended up entering a regular school, learning to speak, and once again did myself out of a job really, and I stopped seeing him. And so it's really rewarding and really lovely when you see that light go on in the parents and in the children when they achieve something that's really important for them and gives them that beautiful quality of life.
Yeah, no, it's wow.
See, that's 2 of many.
Yes, I can imagine. No, it's great to hear. So, do you have any advice that you would like to share?
Yeah, I just encourage parents that I see a lot of parents and you put the blame on yourself. And I've had this conversation recently and many times over the last 15 years. And I just said to someone the other day, you are here seeing me, so it means that you are caring for your child. Don't think anything different. And they were thinking they've had 5 children and their 5th child is the one I'm seeing. The other 4 children, there was nothing they needed therapy for. So they were questioning themselves, wondering, did they do anything different? Is there anything wrong? And I was encouraging them that, you know, as parents, don't take the burden on, you know, that it's your fault, or that you are there to support your child. And as I encourage you, you're your child's first teacher, first cheerleader and coach, and love your children and encourage them to do their best in whatever it is that they're interested in and whatever it is that they feel is important to them, and reassure them, and, you know, where possible, if there's need for therapy, work with the school, and encourage you that early intervention is so important. A lot of parents put it off and think, oh, well, they'll grow out of it and I'll deal with it later. But that's one other piece of advice, is nip it in the bud. And if there's any concerns you have through your child's health nurse or through your GP or through early childhood educators, you know, nip it in the bud and do explore the avenues of what may be needed to be put in place to support your child early. And so you save yourself years of patterns of behaviour that when I see someone who's year 6 or 7, by then they think I'm a bad writer, I can't learn, I can't spell, and you have to do a lot more work with them versus a little 5 or 6-year-old who doesn't even know that they can't do it yet. So that's what I could share, really.
No, yeah, thank you. Very, very valuable. I think it will help a lot of people, and it's always good to find out about this type of support that is available, but it's sort of, I feel, in some cases you only come across if you need it, or if you're referred to this service, or if someone you know does. So it's quite good to know that these solutions are out there.
Yeah, it's very good. And I just thought of one other thing too. I think there's a lot you can do, even if your child isn't referred. Like, I spoke to a mum of a 3-year-old recently, and she attended one of my online workshops that I was doing in helping prepare your child for school in the early years, not in the weeks or days or months just before school, but as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, you can provide drawing and painting and Lego and craft and all the different things that you can fit in around your busy lifestyle, but engaging with your child, reading and talking and speaking with them right from a young age at home. And she was like, oh, until I did your course, I was just leaving it all to the childcare staff. And when we got home, I'm busy working, put them to bed, do that. But now I realise in 10 or 15 minutes a day, there's things I can do that build that bond with my child, and I can do these things. And so I was really thrilled to hear that. And I have an online course coming up, which I don't have any links for at the moment. It's still in the process, but moving on from that 1-hour workshop, I've been going to release an online course that's not live. It'll be recorded, but it'll be the same information that people can access anywhere, anytime, to help inspire them so that they know there's things they can do to help support their child right from the early years and have that beautiful engagement with them that are low cost, can be done around a busy full-time job, and don't cost the earth, but are helpful for their child's development. So I can let you know when that comes out, and but it's not available at the minute.
No problem. But yeah, no, and it's also like a nice activity to do and to share with your kids. So it's only beneficial, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Julie. It's wonderful to talk to you halfway around the world. We're heading into summer and you're heading into winter.
Oh yeah, it's coming fast. But thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Feel free to share if you think it might be helpful to someone you know. If you enjoyed this episode, then please make sure to write a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe if you haven't already. That's it for me. See you soon with the next episode, and in the meantime, have a lovely day.